Hey guys, I'm Kent and welcome back to my 1974 Honda CT70 build. I've got a lot of small projects that I'm working on all at once as I start to have this frame take shape and hopefully soon be a roller. So let me bring you up to speed. So I plan on getting this 1974 motor cleaned up and running well regardless if I put it in this 74 project build bike. But before I do, I needed to get it cleaned up. I had previously been using generic degreaser for projects like this and it had been working just fine. But the folks at Super Clean sent me a few of their products to try out on projects just like this, and I've been pretty impressed with the results. For, again, really caked on areas like this, spraying this product into that area, letting it foam for a few seconds. The longer you let it sit, the better it works. But does a good job at then just pulling all of this stuff off. And again, this is decades worth of grime under here that comes off pretty easily. So a big thanks to the folks at Super Clean for sending me these. I'll keep trying it out as I work on these projects and continue to provide feedback. So the rear shocks were in pretty good shape, and if you take a look at the shock on the left, just a little bit of elbow grease got everything looking pretty good. I used a Scotch-Brite on the aluminum parts and then a little bit of aluminum polish. And then I used steel wool on the springs as well as the chrome cap here. And then just a plastic bristle brush to get in between and clean up all of these spaces. But if you can see, it looks really good and happy with the results. So I'm going to do the other one and then I'll get these onto the frame. So this bike, like most of them, had a broken top plastic piece that the lock nut goes into. I actually designed, for the last few bikes, 3D printed my own here. And in this case, just saves me a few bucks and the hassle of having to wait for a new one. So I'm trying to figure out what to do with the shocks here. Up on the top here is the stock shock that's in pretty rough condition. The legs are aluminum and I can strip it down and polish it. No doubt I can make that look real good. The fork leg though is pretty rusted for one, and they seem pretty bent, which is the bigger problem. So I've been eyeing these shocks on eBay for the last couple of weeks. They're like $85 for the pair of two. It's pretty unclear what they actually come from or what they're for, but they seem to be sized pretty similarly. If I take off this assembly, the overall length is about the same. The diameter of the fork legs are the same. The points where the mounts are and the oil ports are. Actually, that's interesting. This doesn't have a port for the oil. I guess it doesn't allow you to drain it. It feels like there's oil. It feels like there's some oil in it currently. Anyway, this doesn't look as good as I thought it would. The bigger problem too is that I bought a new front axle from CHP. It fits just fine in the stock one, but the diameter is a couple millimeters too small for this one. So I'm going to take this apart and see if this fork leg is the exact same as this. If so, I'm going to move this fork leg into here and just clean this up. Otherwise, if they're not the same, I'm going to put it back together and send these back because yeah, the quality of the rest of the shock isn't impressive. The paint is some really shiny metallic color that looks strange, and yeah, the fact that they went ahead and made the oil drain plug but didn't bother to put an actual bolt there is weird. So I've spent quite a bit of time getting this 40-year-old gasket where it mates to the cylinder. I've just been using this shovel X-Acto knife blade to carefully pull that all off without marring the actual aluminum. Anyway, that's looking pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and keep cleaning the case itself. I'm then going to pull off the clutch cover side and also pull that gasket off. I have a new gasket kit for everything, the head and all of the gaskets, including the center half, although I'm not planning on splitting the case if I can get away with it. My idea here is I'm going to rebuild the head, get it all put back together, and then try to spin it a few times, make sure I'm getting good compression. And if I am, go ahead and try to run it like that. If I'm having compression issues, I'll go ahead and replace the cylinder and the piston first. And if I have other problems like transmission or something, that's when I'll look to actually break the case in half. So it doesn't look like these screws on the clutch cover side have ever been removed, or if they have, they've been removed perfectly because I don't see any marks on the screw heads, which I've seen so far on every other engine like this I've taken apart. So to pull this off, I use one of these impact screwdrivers where you put it in, put some tension on it, and then hit it with a hammer. and it breaks it free pretty easily. All right, the gasket came off of the engine casing all pretty cleanly. I'm happy about that. Everything inside here looks really good. A little bit of gunk on the screen, but not too bad considering 40 years of usage, assuming that this has never been opened. And otherwise, not too much gunk down here where the oil filter plug is. Everything looks really good, so I'm going to go ahead and clean up the rest of the gasket that was left here on the engine casing. And I'm going to clean up the clutch cover case, paint it in an aluminum color, get the new seals on, and start putting this thing back together. I took the head entirely apart, cleaned it up, and am in the process of putting it back together. I've got the valves back in. I bought this tool from Lyle that holds the springs down so that you can get the little moon clips in to retain the springs. I also have a new gasket kit, so I'm just going to get all of the head back together. I also repainted the jug, and I'm painting the case of the engine right now. Going to start getting that back together and then fill it with oil and look to do a compression test and see if we're getting spark. Okay, I've got the engine head back onto the engine itself. I still need to clean up the clutch cover. I just have it sitting here. I wanted to be able to paint this without getting painted on the internals, but I still need to sandblast this and paint this side as well as paint the stator side cover. But it's looking pretty good. I'm going to set this aside now and wait till the frame is a roller. Then I can put this on and start playing with it. All right, so I painted these rim halves a couple of days ago, so they're nice and dry. I just used the VHT aluminum wheel paint, and I like the way that they come out. It looks very close to the Honda Cloud Silver that these originally came in. So I always buy new hardware when I put these together. I've been using a company called Monster Bolts on eBay. They have stainless steel bolts for a very reasonable price. They're also here in Florida, so shipping is very quick for me. Since I'm replacing the hardware anyway, might as well go stainless steel just to prevent corrosion and rust. So the first thing to do is put the two wheel halves together with the M6 bolts, and then using the M8 bolts, putting the hub on. And then I also have a new sprocket for the rear sight here. And then I have tubes, and I've got new tires too. I went with the Shinko SR 421 tires. They have a slightly more aggressive tread. They're actually a little thinner. I think they're 3.5 inch width instead of 4 inch width. But I like the way that they look. I think they're less than half the cost. So let's get the wheels together. And I'm still waiting on solving my suspension problem. So in that previous clip, I was trying to decide what to do between trying to fix the old suspension or using some cheap eBay suspension I bought. I ended up buying a different OEM-like suspension setup from Fat MX in Canada. So that's going to take another week or so to get here. But once I get that suspension in, that should complete the frame setup, and I'll have the wheels ready to pop on, and that should complete my rolling frame. So first thing I do is put a little bit of air into the tube, get the tube inside the tire, and then go ahead and slip half of it on. And move the tire around to make sure that it's not actually going to get pinched inside or in between the two wheel halves. One thing I've noticed with the hardware that I've bought to replace the nut that fits inside of the spaces here in the hub is that I can't find any that are big enough to automatically be locked by the cutout in the hub here. So with all the other ones that I found, I just use a flathead screwdriver to wedge in between the flat side of the nut and the flat side of that spacing, and that allows me to tighten it up and keep it centered. But I haven't yet been able to find stainless steel hardware that perfectly fits that full space. Aesthetically, it doesn't make too much difference once it's done, but as it's being assembled, make sure that you use something there to wedge it so that it's not nicking the corners of the cutout here, and that as long as the shape I think aligns, it looks pretty good. All right, wheels and tires are finished. I just need to get the suspension figured out, and this will be a roller. So 2 weeks later, and I've got the full complete shocks from FatMX. To their credit, they shipped it right away. It was actually sitting in US Customs for the last 10 days. Again, it's the holidays, so I know they have other deliveries to make, but these look much better. The paint on the fork legs are the same cloud silver light color that most of the silver parts on the CT70s have. The front piece here is nice machined aluminum and looks much better than the chromed piece that was in very poor shape on the original ones that the bike came with. So I'm going to get these assembled onto the bike, and that I have the wheels complete, so I'm going to put those on too. And actually I recently ordered the handlebars, so this is going to be a pretty functional roll here in just a minute. All right, so this build is coming along nicely. It now actually looks like a bike, and I can start working on the engine. I also have the handlebars and a few other parts. I have a feeling from here it's going to go pretty quick. So thanks everybody for watching. Stay tuned for more videos.